In this lesson, we'll take a look at creating and applying simple materials to our objects. So up to this point, as we've been building this mech, we haven't really been too concerned about the quality of the surface. So we're not really making anything look like metal or glass or anything like that. It's kind of got all the same surface quality. That's because it has a single material and shader applied to this geometry. That's why everything has this gray look. It is shaded, so you do get that 3D feeling, but it's not really very shiny. It's kind of dull, and it's all the same. So what we can do is apply materials to different parts of this geometry in order to make them look different. So in order to access our materials, we're going to go to Window, and let's go to Rendering Editors, Hypershade. And this is just like any of the other panels. We can actually open it up within our view here if we want to. I'm just going to open up the floating window. And so this is our Hypershade. You can see we have some menus up at the top. We have kind of a section on the left and a section on the right. On the left, these are sort of all of the nodes that we can use when creating the different looks of our surfaces. Okay, you've got overall sections for Maya and Metal Ray, and then you can see there's some specific kind of default materials in here. You can narrow it down by going into the different procedural textures or surfaces. You can see here there are a number of different kinds of materials. Over on the right-hand side at the top, this is where we can find the materials that are currently in our scene. So right now we just have this basic Lambert material, which doesn't have the specularity on it, which is sort of the shininess. And you can see here I can go through the different tabs, look for textures, basically everything in our scene. Now in here is a work area where we can start to see how the nodes connect to one another and kind of customize things and see how everything's connected. So right now everything has this Lambert one applied to it. Okay, if I go into the attribute editor for any of these pieces, you'll see this Lambert one texture. If you wanted to manipulate the material, you could go ahead and open it up by double clicking, and then you can change any of the values. But I don't want to use the default material as my material for any of the pieces. So let's create a new one before we start changing any values. So we can go either over here and click on any of these, or we can go to Create, Materials, and let's take a look at some of the common ones. So Lambert is kind of the basic, doesn't have a specular highlight. As a general rule, Phong is going to be sort of plasticky, and Blinn you're going to get maybe a little bit more of a metallic look. Now there are materials that are much more customized to getting that particular look, but just in general, these are the kind of the three basic materials: Blinn, Phong, and Lambert. So let's create a Blinn. So here you can see our new Blinn. We can double click on that. We can change the name of this Blinn. So let's call this something like Mech Body. And let's give it a temporary color. So we can add a color by coming into our common material attributes, clicking on the swatch, and we'll just choose this kind of green color. You can see our little sphere updates up at the top. We get an indication of the type of material this is. We can also use this slider to brighten or darken whatever color we have in here. Keep in mind, if you do have a color in here and you go all the way black and then go back up, you've lost your color. And so you can go back in and add that in at any time. So now let's apply this material. So we want to apply it to the body. So there are a few ways we can do it. We can click on the body and then right click either here or here and say Assign Material to Selection. Okay. We could also drag it over, middle mouse drag it over into our scene and apply it. All right, we can modify now the color, and you'll see that reflected on any objects that have this material currently applied. We can also change things like the specular shading. So we can sharpen up that specular highlight or broaden it out. We can also brighten up the specular highlight or dull it down a little bit more. So we have a little bit of control over the specularity. There's a lot of channels in here too. The diffuse, how strong that diffuse is. You can make it self-illuminating, so you can change the incandescence, make it kind of glow a little bit, which we'll do in a second. And so we have also all of these little buttons on the side, and we'll look at what those do. Those basically allow you to apply a procedural texture or even a file texture into whatever channel this is. So in color, transparency, we don't have to rely just on these colors or sliders. We can actually use images or other procedural methods here in Maya to drive those, so we create a little bit more interesting shapes. All right, so let's, in the next lesson, take a look at how we can start to manipulate our color incandescence across a surface, and we'll do that using a ramp. So think of a ramp as like a gradient. So let's go ahead and do that next.